Hey, what's up?
Hey man, I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Seems we're live and ready to talk consulting.
Yeah, I know our favorite topic. Yeah. Well, it's good to be here with you, Ladi. My name is Jonathan Eigege. I am a consultant. Work at Albright Stonebridge Group, which is an emerging markets consulting firm based in Washington D.C. But really, we work across the world, and I work on the Africa practice at our team. So really, emerging markets consulting is consulting, but really focus on helping companies enter emerging markets, but also capture the opportunities that exist there, and navigate the risks that those markets present, which are a very specific set of needs that are also market specific. That's sort of the work that I do. And yeah, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, cool, great, and good to finally meet you. So Ladi Greenstreet, I've been with Accenture for it's my 11th year with Accenture. So I've been in the game a while. I've done all sorts in the consulting because that's kind of the beauty of consulting. You get to do a lot of things. I started back in technology deployment. So how do you implement lots of technology, SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, into large clients? I'm based out in the UK, but now I currently lead the open innovation practice for the UK and Ireland. So what that is how you help how we help our clients innovate using external sources of innovation. So predominantly startups. How do you find the startups? How do you bring those startups in, and how do you generate value off those relationships? And so that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years.
Nice, really exciting stuff. I know Brittany's supposed to join. I'm sure she'll join shortly. Um, but yeah, maybe we can get started. Just
Yeah, let's
jump
do it.
off the content.
So in terms of maybe let's start with the getting in. So like, how do you get into welcome to some? So for you, it was probably a few years sooner than me. So maybe before I start
Yeah,
getting old tales from different decades, tell me
yeah,
about
yeah.
your
No, for
journey.
me, only about 4 or 5 years. So this actually is so our kind of consulting is very niche. So I actually didn't know it existed while I was in school. It's growing, and we've actually seen a lot of the bigger players sort of coming into this niche space. But yeah, I think for me getting in, I actually have one of those stories where I just applied and it worked out. But of course, like relationships really matter, especially in consulting, just generally in work. Oh hey, there's Brittany. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so relationships really matter, but I think getting in for me, it really was my education was what made me stand out. So I actually have a master's in Africa studies from Johns Hopkins University, and I was applying to an Africa team. And a lot of the research that I had done was around international companies and sort of like the role that they play in emerging markets. So I was able to tell a story of how I would add to sort of the core mission of what the organization does. And I think that's critical in any sort of application, right? Is sort of tying yourself to the mission and the narrative of the organization and how the specific skill sets that you bring will help you be an asset to the organization. So I think that it wasn't this sort of what isn't where I thought I would end up. I studied international relations, so for a long time I thought I would be a professor, and I was okay with that because I love teaching. But yeah, I think this was unfortunately at the time academia was looking at Africa through sort of not the best lens, right? So sort of the narratives that we always struggle with. And I found this was a space that was looking at the continent positively is how I ended up there. But without sort of the education, I don't think I would have been able to make that case.
Excellent. And Brittany, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Um,
Thanks
but
for the patience.
No, it's all good. So maybe give us a bit of introduction to yourself, and then start talking about how you got into consulting.
Okay, perfect. Yep, and I think I heard both of your intros. So hi, everybody. It's great to be here. My name's Britney Crooks. I, like Lottie, also work at Accenture. I've been with the firm now almost 5 years, so not quite as long, but still quite an interesting journey. I took the route. So I was coming out of business school and working with an analytics company when I decided to make the jump into Accenture. And similar to Ladi, was in our Open Innovation and Accenture Ventures organization supporting our blockchain startups. But I've had the chance to navigate my career into a few different places, which I'm sure we'll talk about today. But right now I'm an executive in our North America cloud practice, leading our innovation agenda. So again, you can take a lot of different paths here, and happy to share some of that as we go through. In terms of my story of how I got in, actually a good friend pulled me into the door. He brought me onto the Open Innovation team, or he brought me to meet the Open Innovation team for lunch one day. And I said, I'm not sure. And he's like, just meet the manager, spend 10 minutes with him. And we chatted, and the manager reached back out and said, if you're interested in joining, I'm hiring folks like now. And so we started with with blockchain and AI through Accenture Ventures, but it was really about a good friend of mine who said, you really should consider trying this.
Yeah, familiar story. Everything's very much now as well. And there's never a long time to think or can reflect. It's about grasping the opportunity when they go. So thanks for that, Britney. I mean, I think I'll end with mine is that I took a very, probably closest to the graduate path, but I actually took 3 years in between graduating and joining Accenture. I straight out of university, I joined a program called Teach First, which is Teach for All or Teach for America, different names in different countries, but essentially I taught for 2 years. And that was a bridge to getting into a corporate. So do some work in your leadership experience in schools and classrooms, and then use that experience when you come into the corporate world. And so I did that for 2 years. It was very challenging. It's still probably more challenging than any day I've had at work. That's the nature of it. And then I spent a year at Procter & Gamble doing brand management. Then spent about 6 months in Silicon Valley working with a bunch of startups, and then joined the graduate scheme, which is like a two-year graduate scheme. I guess maybe whilst we finish the section of getting in, what do you think, bringing back to you for a second, what do you think makes a standout application?
Yeah, I mean, as someone on the other side, as we're interviewing candidates, talking to somebody who knows what they want, right? Why do you want to be here, and what are you going to get out of it? Because part of it, as someone who could be your manager or your interviewer, is I want to understand what goal I'm supporting you in, right? How are we helping you get to that next place in coming to Accenture? Because a lot of people will come and they'll want a job and they won't know anything about why. Like, they won't know Accenture. They won't know anything about why they're applying. They'll just say it was another job rec, right? I've literally had candidates tell me, I honestly don't know this company. And I was like, well, then how do you know that you want to take an offer if we give you one? Right. And so spending a little bit of time to understand some of the things you can do here, or have an experience from a friend that you've learned and heard about that's getting you excited, it goes a long way in an interview. And again, knowing, hey, generally speaking, here's what I want to learn, or here's some of the things I want to do, and this is how it's going to help me. Because we want to make sure that you're making a choice that's good for you and that you're not going to second guess later. Right? We want people that want to be here, that are going to really value being here, who are going to get a ton out of it. So I would say that's one thing for sure that stands out. A cohesive story. I mean, that's true for a business school application. That's going to be true for most things, right? And keep it simple. If I think about anything else, right, when you look at your resume, thinking about not just the story you're telling, but the choices you have and have not made, right? So you may have some gaps, or you may have done something non-traditional, and that's fine, right? It's just in how we talk about it. But make sure you're ready to talk to it, right? I've had people ask me about parts of my resume that's 10 years old, and they're like, if it's on your resume, it's fair game, which is true, right? So just have an interesting story. It doesn't have to be a lot, but just, hey, at this thing, I did this one thing that's kind of cool. That's it. Right. So just have a bit of a story and an emotion connected to each of your experiences. I think that's really helpful. And it'll help us learn more about you and the way you think of those experiences. I mean, Ladi, I can keep going on what else I'm looking for.
What I'm hearing is, like, firstly, know thyself, right? Really
know thyself is
know
huge.
thyself. What's your story, and then tell the story.
Right. As consultants, we do a lot of storytelling, right? If you can't tell your own story, we will definitely teach you to tell some industry story, a technology story, but you have to know how to tell your own story.
And then actually, whilst we're on the storytelling bit, the STAR technique, the situation, task, action, result, is just the base table stakes on what you have to be able to do when you are telling that story. You have to structure in that way because, like Britney says, everything our business survives upon is pretty much good execution and then good storytelling of what's been executed really well. You win new deals by telling the story how you've done this before, telling how you're gonna achieve this now. So it's all about storytelling. And if you can come in and tell a good story of yourself, and typically that's using the STAR method, but talking about your key characteristics, your key choices, as Britney says, is critical, and that's what people look for. Jonathan, over to you. What do you think makes a good application?
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys are speaking exactly what I would say. I would just say, just to reinforce that, the storytelling is important, but credibility is also critical, right? So in telling that story, it's important that passion comes through. I know in my position, recruiting for, junior staff and interns, I'm really looking for people who want to be there, and, people who, it's not just a job, right? But it's people who are really tied into what we do, and who have a reason why they want to be there. So I think in addition to all you just said, you can tell a good story, but I'm only going to believe you if I feel it when I'm speaking to you.
Yeah, and to maybe just to add to that as well, you mentioned about why do you want to be there, and the key thing I think with any job in consulting is just very similar, but is about the values of the firm. Typically on the entry point, you want to see someone has done the homework. Like, know that tell a good story, but really talk about why this company. And I guess with consulting, because the roles vary so much, and many people get into consulting, they don't know what they want to do. So it's kind of like, I don't know what I want to do, so I'm going to go consulting. But still, understanding the place you're going to work out what you're good at and what you're good at executing is important. So a lot of that comes down to the values of the firm, and it's written everywhere, but it's really much felt and breathed within, and those are the softer skills and elements of a person and what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve, and how they go about achieving it with those values is critical. So thanks for that, Jonathan. Is there anyone else that wants to add on this? The standout application?
I mean, one thing I think that's helpful for me is if you say you're interested in something, what certifications, what groups have you joined, what things have you done to help show that you spent some time thinking about this process? Even if it's, I wrote a couple blog articles, right? Taking those extra steps and training yourself, because we are always in the mode of training and consulting, or writing thought leadership because it's so important and it'll be a big piece of how you shine and grow in the firm, right? You want to be known for something, typically around thought leadership. So where you're explaining or where you're showing that early, and it doesn't need to be a huge, 3,000 word essay, right? Sometimes it's just a couple of paragraphs about an article that you've read and doing it on a regular basis to show interest, right? Maybe it's a couple of sentences, but keeping the market up to date on a topic. So it doesn't have to be heavy, right? I spoke to a social media strategist who said you spend 10 minutes on LinkedIn at most twice a week,